Okay? Yes?
What about jokes that are about God that are
Yes, that would fall under
that would
this,
fall under
for
that?
sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So you're not allowed to repeat a joke that was a little, like if it's off color.
I would say yes, that's,
Yeah.
that's correct. Yeah. And certainly jokes about God. I mean, as a priest, there are two kinds of jokes that I get emailed to me all the time: golf jokes and religious jokes about God. But the golf jokes are usually okay. But the religious jokes, I mean, yeah, I mean again, it sort of depends. I mean, there can be jokes that are okay, but then a lot of times there are jokes that are just a flippant use of God and God's name that should be avoided.
I think it would be pretty epic whether there's an intent towards disgracing God's name.
Right. So, I mean, there is a line there. It's not like, I don't want to say that all jokes like that are sinful, because I know even Full of Shame would tell a joke once in a while about heaven and God, whatever it might be, and those are okay. But there are some jokes that are just okay. It's just too light of a use. I mean, for crying out loud, the Israelites wouldn't even say this word. They wouldn't even put it on their tongue. So holy, is God's name. So we should have that same reserve and precaution about what we say. Yes.
I had a boss. Whenever he got really mad, he would say, "God bless it." Is that okay?
No. No, it's using God's name in vain.
God bless America,
Well, if you mean it, it's okay.
Right. I don't know.
I was mad.
You're frustrated, and I guess it.
No, because it's in vain. See, it's using it for no purpose.
But then, what if you really mean it and you say? I guess it would be teaching a bad habit, right?
What do you mean?
I'm just saying, what if in your frustration, I always used to hear my mom say, "Blessed be God." I think she was really praying, but she was frustrated.
Well, if a person is really praying, yes, it's okay. But if it's just an expression, it's in vain.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay? Number 3. Keep holding the Sabbath. All right, so we're going to start this one. Okay. Sabbath comes from the Hebrew word Sabah, which means seventh. So coming from the creation story, as you all know, on the seventh day God rested. And God asked the Israelites to have the seventh day also be a day of rest. Rest from work. There are 6 days that you may work, God says, but the seventh day you are to rest. So rest from work and worship of God. It's also called the Lord's Day. Lord's Day. So for the Jew, the seventh day is what? Saturday. That's where we get the word Saturday. It's the Germanic form of this. For the Christian, the Sabbath day becomes the 8th day, Sunday, because of the resurrection. So it's the new Sabbath that God gives us after the resurrection. So it's the... Oops. Why do we say it's the 8th day? Well, because it's the first day of the new creation. The first 7 days are part of creation. The 8th day, the resurrection, is the first day of the new creation of grace because of what Jesus did on the cross. Okay? Now God, remember what we said about all these commandments, that God has written these things into our hearts. So God has written this Sunday Sabbath, or Sabbath day, into our hearts. It is written in our hearts to give God regular, public, outward, visible worship. God has written it into our hearts for us to give Him regular, public, outward, visible worship. This is what is to happen on the Sabbath day. This is the natural law. It's written into us. So, is it good enough, for example, for someone to say, well, I'll get to that. I'll hang on to that just a minute. Some of you are scribbling feverishly, so I'll hang on for a minute. Let's look at the... for us as Christians, what God has given us for this is the Sunday Mass. Because at the Sunday Mass, we're going to have a whole class on this, actually a couple classes, Jesus' passion, death, and resurrection becomes present to us at the Sunday Mass. So at every Sunday Mass, we join with the whole church. Remember what we said here about written in our hearts? Public worship. We join with the whole church in uniting ourselves once again with Jesus' passion, death, and resurrection. As the Second Vatican Council said, the Sunday Mass is the source and summit of the Christian life. Look at these two words, source and summit. That means that the Christian life comes from the Sunday Mass. Okay? So basically that means the one who is not going to Sunday Mass is not able fully to live the Christian life. Because the Sunday Mass is the source of the Christian life. It's the place from which our prayer springs. It's the place from which our good works spring. It's the place from which, well, whatever else you can think of, about the Christian life springs. And not only is it the source of the Christian life, the church says, it's the summit. In other words, it is the highest point of the Christian life. There's nothing that we do in our earthly life as a Christian that is higher than participation in Sunday Mass. That's what that means. It's the summit of the Christian life. Yes?
Then why do you have Saturday Mass?
I'll get to that. Hang on to that question. Okay. Now, do you see what we're saying here about the Sunday Mass? It is the be-all and end-all of being a Christian. It is the number one thing. There's nothing higher, and if we don't have it, we lose our foundation of being a Christian. The source and summit of the Christian life. That is why, let's look at what the Catechism says here. You have your sheets there? See, it's CCC 2181. Got that on the bottom of the sheet?
Yeah.
Okay. The Sunday Eucharist is the foundation and confirmation of all Christian practice. For this reason, the faithful are obliged to participate in the Eucharist on days of obligation. That means all Sundays and holy days of obligation. Unless excused for a serious reason. For example, illness, the care of infants. You could have the care of the elderly, if you can't leave someone alone and so forth. Or dispensed by their own pastor. I can dispense you from Sunday Mass if you have a good reason. Okay. So look at the bottom here. This is really important because, folks, this is what you're signing up for. And you need to know this ahead of time. All Catholics are obligated to participate at Mass every Sunday and holy day of obligation. Those who deliberately fail in this obligation commit grave sin. So by becoming Catholic, you are saying, I wish to join the Christian community who worships God every Sunday at Sunday Mass. And I promise, with the help of God, to go to Mass every Sunday and holy day of obligation without fail for the rest of my life, unless excused for a serious reason. Okay? This is a big deal. This is an extra. This is the number one thing that you're promising on the day that you become Catholic. This is what a Christian community does. It is the source and the summit of the Christian life. Can I drill it home any harder? Okay? This is what you're promising. For the rest of my life, I will go to Sunday Mass without fail, unless there's a serious reason that keeps me from going to Mass. Okay? Now, there are some obvious questions here that people could raise. Do I see any obvious hands up there? Yes?
Where do I stand as a nurse?
Oh, good question.
Oh, yeah.
Patients get sick on Sundays.
Yes, right. That would be considered one of the necessities. So, there are professions where they have to work 2 12-hour shifts, Saturday and Sunday. It truly is impossible for them to get to Mass without some sort of serious hardship. The church doesn't ask us to do the impossible. God doesn't ask us to do the impossible. So, folks in your situation where you absolutely cannot get to Mass because of your work schedule would be excused. Police officers, firemen, that kind of thing. Anyone that has even people that have jobs that, they have to support their family. They can't just say, well, I have this factory job where I have to work 2 12-hour shifts. I can't just say, well, I'm going to quit my job. Jobs aren't out, they're not a dime a dozen out there. The person in that situation would also be excused.
There's also quite a few masses, because I'm a nurse too, and well, I don't work anymore, but there's some masses that are pretty late into the evening, like on Sunday night. I think there used to be at St. Francis, and then it starts at 4 on Saturday evening. So I mean, you have kind of a
yes, it is possible, but even with that, the church wouldn't say that a person has to make a heroic effort. Okay, so let's say that you're working 2 12-hour shifts, and you come home and you have to take care of your kids. You can't run off to some Mass that's 40 minutes away, to catch the last Mass, you see.
right.
The church, the Lord would understand that situation. Does that make sense?
So would that be in your own particular judgment of that? I mean, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It could be
it really would be. I mean, that would be the kind of thing where you have to weigh your circumstances and follow your conscience. And if you have any question about it, then seek a good priest to bounce it off of. That's what I would suggest.